The Thursday evening heat lingered over Atlanta's West End, cicadas humming outside as the orange glow of sunset filtered through thin curtains. Naomi Bennett, 26, stood frozen in her childhood living room, the same one that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old photo albums, clutching a foreclosure notice in her trembling hands. Across from her, her father, Charles Bennett Sr., sat hunched on their faded couch, elbows on his knees, face buried in his calloused hands. The man who once lifted her onto his shoulders at Juneteenth parades now looked small, defeated, a shadow of himself. "Daddy," Naomi's voice cracked. "What is this? Who is Zion Holt?" Charles looked up, eyes red and tired. "Baby girl, I made a mistake. A big one. 6 months ago, desperate to keep his small hardware store alive, Charles had taken a loan from Zion Holt, a powerful real estate investor known all over Georgia for his cold precision, fast takeovers and contracts that left men bankrupt. The deal had been a trap buried in fine print. Charles thought he'd have a year. Turns out he had 90 days. And now the amount had doubled $300,000. With their home as collateral. "He's coming tonight," Charles whispered. To collect. Naomi's stomach dropped. This was the house her mother had painted yellow before she passed, where Sunday dinners and soft-spoken prayers filled every corner. Losing it meant losing the last piece of her, Mama's soul. The doorbell rang. The sound hit like a verdict. Naomi's pulse kicked hard against her ribs. She met her father's panicked eyes, then forced her shaking legs toward the door. When she opened it, the night seemed to hold its breath. Zion Holt stood beneath the porch light, tall, broad, and dangerously composed. His tailored navy suit gleamed under the amber glow, his dark skin flawless, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass. Those eyes, cold gray with a flicker of heat, locked onto her, studying her like he could read the story of her life in one glance. "Miss Bennett," he said, voice deep and rich with that smooth Atlanta drawl, tempered by boardroom polish. "Yes," Naomi managed, lifting her chin even though her fingers trembled. "You must be Mr. Holt." "Zion," he corrected, stepping past her without waiting for permission. The scent of his cologne, cedar, smoke, something expensive, filled the entryway. He scanned the modest room, then looked back at her. Charming place. Shame about what's happening. Charles appeared behind her, wringing his hands. "Mr. Holt, please, I just need a little more time." Zion's tone dropped cold. "We had a deal. 3 months. Full payment, or the property." The clock ran out. "Please midnight, Mr. Bennett." His gaze sliced through the room like ice. "Either the deed, or the debt, your choice." Something inside Naomi snapped. She stepped between them, fire in her eyes. "You can't just take someone's home like this. There has to be another way." Zion's lips curved, not quite a smile, but something sharper. "Another way," he repeated. "Such as..." Her mouth moved before her brain caught up. "What if I work for you? I have a degree in business management. I have employees," he interrupted smoothly. "Hundreds of them." Naomi's pulse thundered. Then, she swallowed hard, desperation pushing her past reason. "Then take me instead." The air froze. Her father gasped. "Naomi." "No." But Zion had gone still, his expression unreadable, but his eyes burned with a strange, unsettling intrigue. He stepped closer, his presence almost magnetic. "Take you," he said slowly, voice dropping low. "Are you offering what I think you're offering?" Her cheeks flushed hot, but she didn't look away. "One night with me," she whispered, her words trembling but clear, "in exchange for clearing the debt, and leaving this house alone." It sounded insane. It was insane. But losing this house, losing everything her mother left behind, was unthinkable. Zion circled her slowly, eyes tracing her like a man appraising art he didn't yet understand. He stopped inches from her, his breath warm against her ear. "One night," he murmured, complete, undisturbed, until sunrise. No regrets, no backing out. Her heart pounded so loud she barely heard herself whisper, "Deal." Zion's mouth twitched, not cruel, but victorious. He reached into his jacket and slid a sleek black card into her palm. The Skylight Tower Hotel, penthouse, tomorrow, 8 o'clock sharp. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a slow, dangerous murmur. Don't be late, Miss Bennet. I don't appreciate waiting. Then he was gone, his silhouette melting into the dark dot. Naomi stood frozen, staring at the card like it might burn through her skin. Naomi. Charles grabbed her shoulders. You can't do this, baby, please. Tears finally broke free, slipping hot down her cheeks. It's done, Daddy. I can't let them take Mama's house. I won't. That night, she lay awake in the same room where her mother's perfume still lingered faintly in the curtains. Her mind replayed every detail, his eyes, his voice. The impossible choice she'd made. Tomorrow night, everything would change. The Skylight Tower stood like a glass cathedral against the Atlanta skyline, 40 stories of luxury and power. Naomi had driven past it 100 times, never imagining she'd step inside. Now, dressed in the only elegant thing she owned, a fitted black dress and her mother's pearl earrings, she walked across the marble lobby, heart pounding. I'm here to see Mr. Holt, she told the concierge. Penthouse suite. The man's posture straightened instantly. Of course, ma'am. Mr. Holt is expecting you. The elevator rose in silence. 20, 30, 35. Naomi caught her reflection in the mirrored doors, nervous eyes, trembling lips. What am I doing? She whispered. At the 40th floor, the doors opened to a private foyer. Before she could knock, the door at the end opened, and there he was. Gone was the stone-cold mogul from her doorstep. Zion Holt stood in rolled-up sleeves and dark slacks, bare forearms flexing as he leaned against the frame. His hair was slightly tousled, his expression unexpectedly soft. Miss Bennet, he said with that low, calm authority. Right on time. I respect that. I keep my promises, Mr. Holt. Zion, he corrected. Come in. The penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealing the glittering city below. Soft jazz floated through hidden speakers. The furniture was sleek, black leather, and gold accents, like success personified. Naomi hesitated by the door until the quiet click behind her made her flinch. Relax, he said, catching the tension in her shoulders. I'm not going to pounce on you. I've never done anything like this before. I know. He crossed the room, uncorked a bottle of deep red wine, and poured 2 glasses, which is why we'll take this slow. Have you eaten? No, she admitted softly. Good, I had dinner prepared. He motioned toward a candlelit table near the windows. I don't conduct business on an empty stomach. Despite herself, she followed him. The plates gleamed grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, wild rice. This is, she searched for words. Civilized, he offered with a faint smile. She blinked. Exactly. He poured her wine and leaned back. Despite what people say, I'm not a monster. I just don't tolerate losing. My father didn't try to. I know, Zion said quietly. He's a good man who made a desperate choice. But desperation doesn't pay debts. Discipline does. Naomi looked down at her untouched food. Then why am I here? You could have taken the house. Because you surprised me, he said simply. In 15 years of business, no one's ever made an offer like yours. I'm not a novelty to be studied. His gaze softened. No, Naomi, you're something else entirely. They ate quietly after that. Against all logic, she found herself relaxing. He asked about her work, her goals, her mother. He actually listened. When she asked about him, he paused, eyes darkening. I built myself out of nothing, he said. My father died on a construction site. Company never paid. I swore I'd never be powerless again. Naomi saw something in him, pain hidden behind steel. I'm sorry, don't be. He stood, holding out his hand. Come here. I want to show you something. She took it. His palm was warm, solid. He led her to the window, where the whole city glittered beneath them. Every light down there is someone fighting to matter. He murmured, I used to see this view and feel invincible. Now, I just wonder what I'm really building for. Naomi turned and found him inches away. The distance between power and vulnerability vanished. Zion, she breathed. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. You can walk out right now. I'll tear up the contract. Your father's safe. You owe me nothing. She should have left. But she didn't. What if I don't want to leave? She whispered, his eyes darkened. Then, you'd better be sure, Naomi, because once we cross this line. Her trembling hand touched his chest, steady heartbeat beneath her fingers. I'm sure. The space between them dissolved. His lips met hers, gentle, deep, then consuming. The world fell away. Their clothes, their doubts, their reasons scattered like the city lights beyond the glass. And when dawn finally began to break, Naomi lay against Zion's chest. Hearing the steady rhythm of his heart, she should have felt shame, regret, something heavy. Instead, she felt peace. She didn't know yet that this night, born from desperation, would tie their lives forever. The skylight tower rose like a crystal cathedral in the heart of downtown Atlanta. Its mirrored surface catching every last glint of twilight. From below, it seemed unreachable. The kind of place people like Naomi Bennett didn't belong. But tonight, she belonged. Her reflection trembled in the elevator's mirrored glass as the numbers climbed -25, 32, 37. Her chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths. The hem of her simple black dress brushed against her knees. Her mother's pearl earrings caught faint light with every heartbeat. She whispered to herself, "Don't fall apart now." The elevator chimed at the 40th floor. A hush, like the world holding its breath. Naomi stepped out into a marble foyer that looked too perfect to touch. Before she could lift her hand to knock, the door at the end of the hallway opened, and there he was, Zion Holt, no longer in his dark suit of power, but in a white shirt rolled up to his forearms, dark slacks, hugging a frame built by both discipline and destiny. His hair, slightly undone, softened his sharp jaw. His voice, that rich southern velvet with an edge of authority, filled the space like a command. "Miss Bennett," he said, eyes steady on her. "Right on time. I keep my promises, Mr. Holt." He smiled faintly, something unreadable flickering behind his gaze. "Zion," he corrected, stepping aside. "Come in." Naomi crossed the threshold, her heels clicking lightly against stone. The penthouse opened around her, like a world-apart floor-to-ceiling windows, spilling the city's golden veins beneath them. The air smelled faintly of oak, rain, and something expensive she couldn't name. Behind her, the soft click of the door made her flinch. "Relax," he said quietly. "I'm not going to jump you." "I didn't think you would," she lied, voice tight. Zion arched a brow, amused. "You're not used to being afraid, are you?" "I'm not used to being owned." She shot back before she could stop herself. A low hum of a laugh escaped him, genuine, surprised. "Good," he murmured. "Keep that." He walked past her into an open kitchen where 2 wineglasses already waited. "Have you eaten?" Naomi hesitated. "No." "Good," he said, uncovering plates already waiting on a candlelit table near the windows. "I don't make deals on an empty stomach." The meal looked like a work of art: salmon glazed in honey ginger, roasted asparagus, wild rice. She took her seat across from him, feeling like she'd stepped into someone else's movie. "This is," she started. "Civilized," he offered, smirking. She exhaled, a nervous laugh slipping out. Unexpected, he poured her a glass of red wine, deep and full-bodied, and leaned back in his chair. "People think I'm cruel. But I'm just honest. The world doesn't reward hesitation." "Naomi, what does it reward?" she asked softly. "Control," he said. Then, after a pause, courage. They ate in silence for a while, the city twinkling behind them. Every time she looked up, he was already watching her. Not hungry, not lustful, but curious. "Tell me something about yourself," he said. "Something real." She hesitated, then shrugged. "I studied business, tried to help my dad keep his shop running. Thought I could fix everything if I just worked harder." "Did you?" She smiled sadly. "No. Turns out, you can't outwork bad luck." Zion nodded once, the faintest hint of empathy breaking through the armor. "You'd be surprised how familiar that sounds." "What about you?" she asked. You built an empire. What made you start? He leaned back, his eyes shifting to the skyline. A funeral. Naomi froze. My father, Zion continued quietly. He worked construction, died on a site that cut corners. They never paid what he earned. My mother begged for months. I watched her beg. I swore I'd never be at anyone's mercy again. The silence between them was heavy, but not cold. Naomi saw something raw flicker through the steel in him, a ghost of pain. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. His tone softened. Pain's a hell of a teacher. He stood then, gesturing toward the windows. Come here. Naomi hesitated, then rose, letting him take her hand. His palm was warm, steady. He led her to the glass where the whole of Atlanta sprawled beneath them like a constellation. Every light down there, he murmured, is someone fighting not to be invisible. That used to drive me. Power, legacy. But lately, what? She asked. He looked at her, the storm in his eyes giving way to something startlingly human. Lately, I'm not sure what I'm chasing anymore. The words hung there, honest, unguarded. Naomi turned to face him fully, their reflections framed by the city's glow. You don't have to be chasing something all the time, she said softly. Zion's gaze fell to her lips. Maybe not, but tonight, maybe I found something worth stopping for. Her breath caught. He reached up, fingers brushing a curl from her cheek. You can still leave, he said. I'll call your father, tear up the contract, pay the taxes myself. You owe me nothing. Naomi's heart thundered. She should have said thank you and walked out, but she didn't. What if I don't want to leave? His eyes darkened. Then you need to be sure, Naomi. I am. The air between them ignited. Zion moved closer, slowly, giving her time to pull back. She didn't. Their lips met. First gentle, questioning, then hungry, with years of restraint breaking loose. His hand cupped her jaw, her fingers fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer as the city blurred behind them. It wasn't a transaction anymore. It was connection, fierce, unplanned, terrifyingly real. He tasted like wine and fire, like every risk she'd never taken. When he lifted her, her gasp melted into his kiss. They left a trail of discarded clothes from the window to the bedroom, where the world turned soft and infinite. The sheets were white. The air smelled like skin and rain and surrender. Zion hovered above her, eyes locked to hers. Reverent? You're beautiful, he said simply. Naomi blinked through tears. She didn't understand. This isn't supposed to feel like this. Maybe nothing worth feeling ever is, he whispered, and kissed her again. The night unfolded in slow, breathless waves. Every touch was deliberate, every sigh shared. Somewhere between pleasure and pain, Naomi forgot the reasons she'd come here at all. When dawn broke, soft light slipping through sheer curtains, she lay tangled against his chest, her fingers tracing the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Zion, she murmured. He didn't answer. He was half asleep, one arm still draped over her waist, like an unspoken promise. Naomi closed her eyes. She should have felt regret, guilt, something sharp, but she didn't. For the first time in years, she felt safe, seen. She didn't know yet that this night, born from desperation and sacrifice, had already changed the course of both their lives forever. 3 weeks later, the world had stopped spinning normally for Naomi Bennett. She sat on the edge of the bathtub in her father's house, both hands clutching a small white stick that had just shattered every version of her future she'd imagined. 2 pink lines, not faint, not questionable, bold, certain, irreversible, pregnant. Naomi single quotes as breath caught somewhere between a sob and a prayer. Her knees buckled and she slid down until she was sitting on the cold tile floor. Oh God! Her mind flickered back to that night, the penthouse, the city lights, Zion's heartbeat under her palm. The way he whispered her name, like it was sacred. She remembered waking up at dawn to find him already dressed, standing near the window in that soft grey light, holding 2 mugs of coffee. He'd turned toward her, eyes unreadable. I meant what I said. The debt's gone. The house is yours. You don't owe me anything. She'd pulled the sheet higher, feeling bare in every sense of the word. Just like that. Just like that, he'd said, and then, softer. Last night wasn't about a debt, Naomi, not for me. Then what was it about? She'd asked quietly. He'd paused for a long moment, jaw tightening, as if fighting words he wasn't used to saying. I don't know yet, he'd admitted, but I'd like to find out. Can I call you? She'd said yes, and somehow, impossibly. He'd kept his word. The next few weeks blurred into a rhythm she didn't see coming. Coffee meets that turned into dinners. Dinners that turned into long late-night talks on his balcony overlooking the city. Zion had layers underneath the power and polish, was a man who quoted Baldwin, collected vinyl records, and secretly loved his mama's peach cobbler recipe. And Naomi. She was falling hard. Now here she was, hands trembling, staring at proof of what one night, and everything that followed, had created a baby lord, she whispered, voice trembling. What am I supposed to do? She thought of Zion, his discipline, his walls, his fear of weakness. What would he think? That she'd trapped him. That this was a scheme, or would he see it as something else? Something real. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Zion Holt. Dinner tonight, my place. 7 p.m. Need to talk. Her heart jumped into her throat. Did he already know? No, that was impossible. She'd only found out herself an hour ago. Still, the timing made her dizzy. She typed back, yes. See you then. Then placed a trembling hand over her still flat stomach. All right, little one, she whispered, half laughing, half crying. Guess we're telling your daddy tonight. Zion's townhouse sat in Buckhead, quiet and tree-lined, the kind of place that whispered money instead of shouting it. When Naomi arrived, he opened the door himself, flour dusting his hands, the scent of garlic and basil flooding the air. You're cooking, she said, eyes wide. He grinned. Don't look so shocked. I'm a man of many talents. Naomi laughed, the first real laugh she'd had all day. Inside, candles flickered across marble counters. Smooth jazz played softly in the background. A D'Angelo track, humming under the sound of simmering sauce. Dinner smells amazing, she said. Setting her purse down, it's homemade ravioli, Zion said. Sage butter sauce. Don't ask how long it took me. You did all this yourself. He winked. Don't ruin my reputation. My team thinks I eat CEOs for dinner. Naomi giggled, shaking her head as he pulled out her chair. He was nervous, she could tell. The confident, composed Zion Holt was fidgeting. They ate, talked, laughed, but something hovered in the air between them. When the plates were cleared, Zion set his wine glass aside and reached across the table. Taking her hand, Naomi, he began, voice low. These last few weeks, you've turned my life upside down. Her pulse raced. I know it's only been a short time, he continued, but I can't ignore what I feel. I've spent my life building walls, and somehow, you walked right through them. Naomi swallowed hard, fighting tears. I don't want to lose this, he said, squeezing her hand gently. I don't want to lose you. So? He inhaled deeply. Move in with me. Naomi blinked, stunned. What? Move in, he repeated, smiling nervously. Let's stop pretending we're figuring it out. Let's just be us. No contracts, no fear. Just us. Her throat tightened. Zion, before I answer, there's something I have to tell you. He frowned. What's wrong? Naomi took a shaky breath and pressed a hand to her stomach. I'm pregnant. The words hung between them, heavy as thunder. Zion went perfectly still. His jaw flexed, eyes flickering through 1,000 emotions, shock, disbelief, something close to awe. Pregnant, he repeated softly, as if testing the word. We're having a baby. I only found out this morning, Naomi rushed out. I know this is fast, and crazy, and probably not what you. Zion stood suddenly. Naomi's heart sank. This was it, the rejection. The anger. But instead, he walked around the table, pulled her up from her chair, and kissed her, deep, fierce, like he was claiming the truth of it. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were bright. Say it again? What? That you're pregnant, she smiled through tears. I'm pregnant, he laughed, a rich, unrestrained laugh that filled the room. We're having a baby. He wrapped her in his arms, spinning her once. Naomi Bennett, you're about to make me a father. Naomi pressed her face to his chest, overwhelmed. You're happy? Happy? He cupped her face in his hands. Baby, I'm terrified. But I'm so damn happy. I didn't think I'd ever get this a family, a second chance. He kissed her again, slower this time. You changed everything, Naomi, and I want to do this right. Then he reached into his pocket. Naomi blinked. Zion. He smiled, a little sheepishly. I was going to wait until dessert, but life doesn't wait for perfect moments. He opened a small black velvet box. Inside sat a platinum ring, simple, elegant. The diamond catching candlelight like starlight. Naomi Bennett, he said, voice steady now. I know this is fast. I know it's wild, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Marry me. Build this life with me. Let's make this chaos ours. Naomi's hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Then louder, laughing through tears. Yes, yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, perfect fit, then kissed her hand, her wrist, her lips. I love you, he murmured against her skin. Naomi smiled, eyes shining. I love you too. They stood there, holding each other, both shaking from the weight of what they'd just promised. A baby, a marriage, a lifetime neither of them saw coming. Zion exhaled against her temple. We should tell your father. Naomi laughed through tears. He might actually faint. Then I'll catch him, he said with a grin. Her laughter melted into soft silence as she rested a hand on her belly. There's more, she whispered. The doctor said I should schedule an ultrasound next week. You'll come? Wild horses couldn't keep me away. The following Tuesday, they sat side by side in Dr. Monique Harris's office, hands clasped tight. Naomi lay back on the examination table as the doctor applied cool gel to her stomach and smiled. Let's take a look at this little miracle, Dr. Harris said. The soft rhythmic sound of a heartbeat filled the room. Naomi's breath hitched. Zion's hand tightened around hers. There's your baby, Dr. Harris said warmly, moving the wand. Then she paused. Oh. Naomi's pulse spiked.
Oh, what?
Is something wrong? The doctor's grin spread wide. Not at all. I'm hearing 2 heartbeats. Naomi blinked. 2. Congratulations, Dr. Harris said, turning the screen so they could see. You're having twins? Zion froze, then stared at the screen like it held the universe. Twins, he whispered. To babies. Naomi couldn't even speak. Zion looked at her, laughter bubbling through disbelief. Naomi, we're having 2 babies. She laughed and cried all at once as he kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. Twice the chaos, he said, smiling wide. Twice the love. Dr. Harris printed 2 grainy ultrasound photos and handed them over. Zion held them like fragile treasure as they walked out into the sunlight. Naomi looked up at him. We're really doing this. Zion slid his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. We're not just doing it, he said softly. We're building something no deal or contract could ever buy. And as they stood there, with Atlanta glowing behind them and 2 tiny heartbeats beneath her skin, Naomi believed him. The next 6 weeks moved like somebody hit fast forward on Naomi's life. Days blurred into fittings, phone calls, emails, and baby apps on her phone. Nights blurred into conversations with Zion about cribs, and college funds, and whether twins meant they needed a bigger car. Zion attacked wedding planning with the same intensity he used in multi-million-dollar deals, only this time, every choice started with one question. Will this make Naomi happy? One evening, their dining table in his Buckhead townhouse disappeared beneath glossy venue brochures. Zion spread them out with laser focus, like he was about to acquire half of Georgia. What do you think about Rosewood Estate? He asked, tapping one photo. Big gardens for an outdoor ceremony, and the ballroom can hold 300 guests. Naomi looked up from the baby name book she'd been reading, eyebrows shooting up. 300? Zion, I don't even know 300 people. I do, he said dryly, grimacing. Investors. Board members. People who will act like I waged war on their stock portfolios if they're not invited. She snorted. Sounds like a personal problem. He laughed, then walked around the table and sank into the chair beside her. Taking her hand, he squeezed it gently. If you want something smaller, more intimate, we'll do that, he said. Forget them. This is your day, Naomi, your wedding. Our wedding, she corrected softly, lacing their fingers together. And honestly, I don't care if there are 3 people or 300. I just want to marry you. Something unguarded slipped into his eyes. His face had been doing that a lot lately, the hard edges softening whenever he looked at her. His hand slid from her fingers to her stomach, resting there reverently. At 12 weeks, the small swell of her bump was finally visible. A little curve that thrilled and terrified her all at once. How are they today? He asked, his voice dropping into that tender tone he only used when it was the 3 of them, him, Naomi, and the babies. Active, she sighed. I swear I can already feel them fighting for space in there. It's like a tiny wrestling match. Sounds like they take after their mother, he said. Stubborn, strong, refuses to move when anyone tells her to. Or their father, she shot back. Competitive, ambitious, probably already trying to negotiate who gets the bigger side of the womb. Zion chuckled and leaned down until he was eye level with her belly. He rested one hand on her bump and spoke softly. All right, you two, he murmured, his accent warmer, looser. Listen up. Your mama is growing y'all from scratch. That is hard work. So tonight, give her a break, okay? Naomi's heart swelled as she slid her fingers through his hair. The rumored shark of Atlanta real estate was talking to her stomach like it held the safest thing he'd ever known. In the past few weeks, she'd caught him reading parenting books late at night, phone forgotten on the table. He'd bookmarked pediatricians, compared strollers, and quietly started turning one of his guest rooms into a nursery. Sage green paint swatches taped to the walls. 2 cribs, already on order. The Rosewood estate sounds perfect, Naomi said finally, looking back at the brochure. Let's book it. Zion glanced up, surprised. You're sure? I'm sure, she said. Besides, I want people to see how happy we are. Let them whisper. Let them speculate. We know what this is. He tilted his head. And what's that? Naomi leaned in and brushed her lips over his. That this is real. That we're real, and we're going to be amazing parents. His answering smile was slow and full. Then Rosewood, it is they chose a late October date, when George's trees would be showing off, burnt orange, gold, and deep red lining the estate's grounds. When they told Charles Bennett about the engagement and the twins, Naomi's father cried openly, no attempt to hide it. He'd pulled Zion aside afterward on the porch of the Maplewood Lane house, fingers tight on his shoulder. You take care of my girl, Charles said, voice rough from emotion. She's all I've got. Zion didn't flinch under the weight of the words. She's all I have too, he replied simply. I promise you, sir, I'll spend the rest of my life making her happy. Something in Charles's face eased, like a knot finally loosening. Now. On the afternoon of the wedding, Naomi stood in the bridal suite at Rosewood, staring at the woman in the full-length mirror and trying to reconcile her with the girl she'd been 6 months ago. Her dress was a masterpiece, ivory lace with delicate sleeves, fitted just enough to highlight her curves before flowing into a soft skirt that skimmed over her baby bump like it had been designed for this exact moment. Her hair was swept into an elegant updo, curls pinned and tucked with tiny white roses woven through. A thin veil cascaded down her back, catching the late afternoon light. Behind her, Tiana Reed, her best friend from college and maid of honor, fussed with the veil like she was styling a magazine cover. Naomi Bennett, Tiana breathed, eyes already glossy. Girl, you are glowing. I still cannot believe this. You're marrying a millionaire, and you're pregnant with twins. Your life is literally a black romance novel. Naomi laughed, one hand instinctively covering her bump. "Trust me, it feels just as wild from this side." 6 months ago, Tiana said, adjusting the fabric, you were running charity drives, chasing grants, and stressing over your dad's inventory spreadsheets. Now I'm about to walk out there, Naomi said softly, marry the love of my life, and become a mum to 2 babies who already own my heart. Tiana squeezed her shoulders from behind. You deserve every bit of this. Every single piece of joy coming your way. A knock sounded at the door. Come in, Naomi called gently. Charles stepped in. Wearing a new suit, Zion had insisted on buying charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. For a moment, he just stared at her. His eyes filled so fast it stole Naomi's breath. Oh baby girl, he whispered. Your mama would be so proud. Naomi felt her own tears threaten. Daddy, don't you start. Tiana spent an hour on this makeup. He laughed shakily, then wiped at his eyes anyway. I'm sorry. It's just... You look so much like her, and now you're about to start your own family. It's a lot for an old man's heart. Naomi crossed the room and took his hands. Mum is here, she said softly. I feel her with us. And I know she'd love Zion, even with how much he works, and how obsessed he is with making sure I eat every 2 hours. Charles chuckled, shoulders relaxing. That man does love you. Anyone with eyes can see it. The way he looks at you, Naomi. Like you hung the stars yourself. Naomi's smile turned soft, eyes shining. And I look at him the same way, she admitted, in a few minutes. She'd walk out to say vows she'd never expected to speak, carrying not just a bouquet but 2 tiny heartbeats under her dress. But for now, in this quiet room filled with flowers and memories, Naomi stood between her best friend and her father, caught at the edge of the life she'd always prayed for, and let herself feel the full, overwhelming weight of it. The Rosewood estate glowed like a dream. Late afternoon sunlight spilled over the manicured gardens, setting the autumn leaves ablaze, crimson, amber, gold. Rows of white chairs faced an arch wrapped in vines and ivory roses. The soft strains of a live-string quartet drifted through the crisp October air, mixing with murmured excitement and the faint scent of magnolias. At the end of the aisle stood Zion Holt, in a custom black tuxedo that looked like it had been tailored by God himself. His hands were clasped behind his back, the faintest tremor betraying his nerves. Beside him stood Marcus Cole, his best man, a friend who'd seen him close $1 million deals without blinking, but was now watching him sweat bullets over love. You good? Marcus murmured under his breath. Zion exhaled, eyes on the empty aisle. I'm about to marry the woman who turned my entire life upside down. So yeah, I'm terrified, but I've never been more sure of anything. Marcus smiled. Then, it's real. The music shifted. Pocklebells, canon in D, swelling and graceful. Everyone rose. Zion's heart stopped at the far end of the aisle. Framed by sunlight and her father's steady arm, Naomi Bennett appeared. For a moment, the world went silent. Her dress caught the light, lace shimmering like frost on water. The soft train brushed against fallen leaves, her veil glowing around her face. One hand clutched a bouquet of ivory roses and eucalyptus. The other rested protectively over the small, rounded bump beneath her gown, carrying the 2 lives that bound them together forever. Zion's vision blurred. He realized dimly that tears were slipping down his face. He didn't even try to stop them. Naomi's eyes found his, and she smiled, nervous, radiant, full of love. Step by step, she crossed the distance that had once separated their worlds. When she reached the altar, Charles Bennett turned to Zion, his expression fierce and fatherly all at once. Take care of her, he whispered. Zion's voice was steady. With my life, sir. Charles nodded, placed Naomi's hand into Zion, and stepped back. The world fell away, Pastor Rochelle Brown, a warm woman with silver braids and a voice that carried both reverence and humor, smiled at them. Dearly beloved, she began. We are gathered here today, in the presence of love, God's greatest creation, to celebrate the joining of Zion Holt and Naomi Bennett. Zion barely heard the rest. His entire focus was on Naomi, Her trembling hands, her shy smile, the way her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. When it came time for the vows, Zion's voice wavered but didn't break. "Naomi," he began softly, "6 months ago, I thought I knew what I wanted: power, control, respect. Then you came into my life and showed me what I needed: love, connection, peace. You saw through the walls I built and loved me anyway." He paused, the emotion thick in his throat. "You're giving me something I never thought I'd have. A family. I promise to protect you, to cherish you, and to be the man our children can look up to. I promise that whatever storms come our way, I'll stand beside you through every one. I love you today, tomorrow, and for all the days after." Naomi's tears spilled freely now. She took a breath that trembled like the leaves overhead. "Zion," she began, "when we met, I was terrified. You were everything I wasn't ready for: intense, unstoppable, impossible to ignore. I thought what we had was a mistake, but I was wrong. What I thought was an ending was really the beginning." Her voice steadied as she continued. "You've shown me a version of love I didn't think existed: honest, protective, patient. You make me feel seen, safe, whole. I promise to support you when you fall, to celebrate you when you rise, and to remind you every day that you are more than your work or your wealth. I promise that our children will grow up knowing their father is a good man." Zion's tears were falling freely now. Pastor Brown smiled through her own misty eyes. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Zion barely waited. He cupped Naomi's face with trembling hands and whispered, "Hello, Mrs. Holt." Naomi's answering whisper trembled with laughter. "Hello, Mr. Holt." Their kiss drew applause that rolled through the garden like a wave. Cameras flashed, guests cheered, and gospel harmonies from a nearby quartet rose in the background, soulful, joyful, wrapping the moment in music. The reception was a blur of gold light, laughter, and clinking glasses. The ballroom glowed with crystal chandeliers and autumn florals spilling from tall vases. Guests danced, toasted, cried, and filled the space with warmth. Zion couldn't take his eyes off Naomi, now his wife, as she laughed with her father on the dance floor, her dress sweeping in slow circles. When it was his turn, he pulled her close. The song changed to a slow R&B classic, "Forever Mine" by the OJs, and the world seemed to hush again. "You good?" he whispered against her temple. Naomi smiled. "I'm perfect." He kissed her forehead. "I never believed in fate before you." "Guess fate didn't care," she teased. He chuckled softly, then turned serious. "I meant what I said up there. You saved me, Naomi." She looked up at him, eyes glimmering. "And you gave me back my faith in love." Later, as speeches began, Marcus clinked his glass and stood. "I've known Zion for over a decade," he began. "And in all that time, I've seen him win every fight, every deal, every argument. But I have never, and I mean never, seen him lose control the way he did the day he met Naomi." Laughter rippled through the room. Marcus smiled at them. "Brother, you didn't lose that day. You finally won something worth keeping." Applause followed, warm and knowing. Zion stood next, surprising everyone by taking the mic himself. "Most people know me as a man of business," he said, eyes scanning the crowd. "But this right here, this is the best deal I ever made." Everyone laughed, and Naomi swatted at him playfully, blushing. Zion continued, his voice softening. "Naomi came into my life at a time when I didn't believe in second chances. She reminded me that love isn't weakness. It's the only kind of strength that matters." He glanced toward the crowd, then back to Naomi. "And since we're all here, friends, family, community, I think it's time we share something special." Naomi's eyes widened. "Zion," she whispered, already guessing. He smiled proudly and lifted her hand in his. "We're expecting not one, but 2 little Holt babies." The crowd erupted, gasps, cheers, and joyful screams echoing through the hall. Tiana jumped to her feet, shouting, "Twins! Girl, you better get ready for no sleep ever again." Charles wiped his eyes at the table, half laughing. Half crying, Zion kissed Naomi's hand, grinning like a man who'd just found heaven on earth as the applause swelled. Naomi leaned in close and whispered, "You just hijacked our wedding with a baby announcement." He grinned. "Best press release I've ever written." When the night wound down and the music softened, Zion and Naomi slipped out to the balcony overlooking the glowing city. The air was cool, carrying the scent of roses and the faint hum of laughter from inside. Zion stood behind her, arms circling her waist, his palms resting over the small bump that carried their future. "Look at us," Naomi whispered. "Who would have thought?" Zion pressed his lips to her shoulder. "Anyone who knows me wouldn't, but I think your mama knew." Naomi smiled, blinking back tears. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think she did." They stayed there in silence for a long time. The city lights stretching endlessly ahead, proof that even in a world built on power and debt and deals, love had the last word. The months after the wedding moved like a soft, steady tide for Naomi Bennett-Holt. Life shifted from vows and champagne to appointments, swollen ankles, and the slow transformation of their house into a home built for four. Zion Holt threw himself into preparing for fatherhood, with the same relentless focus he used in boardrooms, only this time, it wasn't about profit or control. It was about love. He'd taken over one of the upstairs rooms in their Buckhead townhouse, stripping it down to the studs if he could have gotten away with it. Instead, he painted the walls a soothing sage green with warm cream trim, insisting the color felt peaceful but still fly. Two cribs sat side by side like matching thrones, already assembled even though Naomi was only 5 months along. A plush rocking chair waited by the window for late-night feedings. Floating shelves lined the walls, ready to be filled with picture books, toys, and framed photos they hadn't taken yet. One evening, Naomi waddled, and at this point, she'd officially admitted it was waddling into the nursery and stopped in the doorway. Zion was at the dresser, carefully folding and refolding impossibly tiny onesies, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. She leaned against the doorframe, watching him with a smile tugging at her lips. "You know they won't be here for another 4 months, right?" He looked up, caught, his expression a mix of embarrassment and stubborn pride. "I'm aware," he said. "I just want everything perfect when they get here." Naomi shuffled over, wrapping her arms around him from behind as best as she could, with her belly now officially taking up half the space between them. Her bump was prominent, turning simple movements into small adventures. "Zion Holt, perfectionist extraordinaire," she murmured, resting her cheek against his back. "Our babies hit the jackpot with you." He turned in her arms so they were face to face, his hands automatically finding her stomach, right on cue. One baby kicked, then the other, like they knew their father was there. "They're wild tonight," Zion said, his face lighting up the way it always did when he felt them move. "They're wild every night," Naomi groaned. "I'm convinced they've started a tiny soccer league in there." A sharp jab caught her under the ribs and she winced. "And I'm pretty sure Baby A already decided their team captain." Zion laughed, dropping to one knee and leaning in until his mouth was level with her belly. "All right. You too," he said, voice soft and playful. "Let's negotiate. Y'all give your mama a break tonight, and I'll read you that story about the rabbit and the velveteen horse." Naomi snorted, sliding her fingers through his hair. "It's the Velveteen Rabbit, Mr. Fancy Degrees." "Yeah, that one," he said, kissing the curve of her belly. "You'll hear that. We got culture and classic literature in this house." As if responding, the kicking eased a little. Naomi shook her head in disbelief. "I swear, they already listen to you better than they listen to me." "That's 'cause I'm not the one keeping them cramped in a studio apartment," he teased. Standing and looping an arm around her shoulders, he guided her gently toward their bedroom. "Come on, Mama, let's get you horizontal. Dr. Harris said you need rest." She said, "Moderate activity is fine," Naomi argued. "You're the one acting like I'm made out of stained glass." "You're carrying 2 whole human beings," Zion countered. "That makes you more valuable than anything breakable." Her heart melted again. It happened at least a dozen times a day now. She'd known Zion was disciplined, brilliant, focused. She hadn't known this version. Tender, protective, almost reverent whenever he looked at her and their unborn kids. They settled into bed, lights dimmed to a warm glow. Zion propped himself against the headboard, and Naomi nestled between his legs, her back to his chest, his arms wrapping around her bump like a shield. He grabbed the worn paperback from the nightstand, the Velveteen Rabbit, edges soft from constant use. Chapter 3, he announced. Voice dropping into a smooth storytelling rumble. Naomi closed her eyes, listening as his baritone rolled through his chest and into her back. She felt the baby stir, gentle movements responding to the familiar sound of their father's voice. This was her life now, this calm, this warmth, this unexpected sweetness she never dared to dream she'd have. At 6 months. They headed to Dr. Monique Harris's office for the anatomy scan, the big one. The one that could tell them whether they were having boys, girls, or one of each. In the waiting room, Naomi shifted in her chair, trying to find a position that didn't involve her lower back plotting revenge. Zion sat beside her, their fingers laced tight. So, she asked, glancing over at him, you want to find out, or you want to wait? He tilted his head. You tell me first. Oh, so we're doing that? She said, narrowing her eyes. I asked you. You answer. Zion chuckled. Naomi, this is a we decision. No wrong answer. Just what feels right to us. She chewed her bottom lip, thinking, part of me wants to know now. To plan, to pick names, to argue over who gets which middle name. And the other part? He asked, the other part? She smiled softly. Loves the idea of meeting them in that moment and learning who they are right then. Like unwrapping a surprise God picked out himself. Zion nodded slowly. Then we wait, he decided. We're gonna love them either way. Boy, girl, one of each, doesn't matter. They're ours. When Dr. Harris came in and started the ultrasound, she gave them a knowing look. So, are we finding out genders today, or are we keeping it a surprise? We're waiting, they said at the same time, then laughed. All right, team, Dr. Harris said. Let's check on these little stars. The screen filled with grainy black and white images, but to Naomi, it felt like the clearest thing she'd ever seen. Tiny fingers curled into fists, the arch of a small spine, the soft outline of a baby's face. Her throat tightened with emotion. Baby A is measuring right on track. Dr. Harris narrated, moving the probe with practiced ease. Strong heartbeat, beautiful movement. And baby B. She slid to the other side, also perfect. 2 healthy little ones, everything looks beautiful. Naomi exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Your due date is still March 15th. Dr. Harris continued, but with twins, we'll probably meet them a little sooner, maybe late February. Late February, Zion repeated, as if trying the words on for size. That's less than 3 months away. Nervous, Dad? Dr. Harris asked, amusement dancing in her eyes. Terrified, he admitted without hesitation. But I'm ready. Naomi squeezed his hand. They'd been taking parenting classes together, highlighting passages in books, calling friends with kids, watching newborn videos at 2 a.m. Zion had even secretly joined a first-time dads forum online, something Naomi had promised to take to the grave. You two are going to be wonderful parents, Dr. Harris said warmly. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I can always tell what you'll have. It's special. Naomi blinked back tears, her chest full to bursting. As the 3rd trimester rolled in, Naomi's body started demanding more respect. Walking turned into sleep. Getting out of bed became a strategic operation. Her feet swelled, her back ached, and the twins seemed to think her bladder was a stress ball. Zion responded by leveling up his overprotective mode. He hired extra help for the house, even though Naomi swore she could still handle things. He moved more of his work remote, taking meetings from the home office so he could pop out every hour to check on her. He made sure there was always fresh fruit cut up in the fridge and water bottles within arm's reach. One afternoon in early February, Naomi stood in the nursery, folding tiny socks and onesies into neat stacks. Sunlight filtered in through the window, turning the sage wall's golden dot. She was humming under her breath when it hit her, a sudden, sharp tightening across her belly that stole the air from her lungs. Her hand shot out, grabbing the edge of the dresser for support. The sensation eased after a few seconds, leaving her breathless and rattled. "Okay," she whispered. "We're not doing that again." A moment later, it hit her, again stronger, more insistent. Her heart slammed into her ribs. "Zion," she called, trying and failing to keep the fear out of her voice. He appeared in the doorway almost instantly. Laptop forgotten somewhere in the house. "Naomi, what's wrong?" She pressed a hand to her belly, face pale. I think I'm having contractions." He went white. "But you're only 34 weeks. That's too early." "I know," she said, voice shaking as another wave rolled through her. "Oh God. Okay, that one hurts." Zion moved to her side, one arm bracing her, the other already reaching for his phone. "I'm calling Dr. Harris." The next 20 minutes blurred together. Dr. Harris's calm/steady voice on speaker laying out instructions. Zion grabbing the hospital bag they'd packed weeks ago, just in case. Naomi trying to breathe through the tightening, reminding herself that panic helped no one, not her, not the babies. The drive to Mercy General Hospital felt both endless and way too fast. Zion's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "It's gonna be okay," Naomi kept saying, focusing on her breathing. "We're okay. We're fine. You're the one in labor, and you're comforting me," Zion said, his voice strained. "You know that's backwards, right?" She managed a weak laugh between contractions. "You're kinda cute when you panic." "Naomi, I'm serious," he said, glancing over, eyes raw with fear. "If anything happens to you or the babies," she reached for his hand, squeezing as another contraction tore through her. "We're gonna be fine. All three of us. We have to be." At the hospital, everything sped up. Nurses met them with a wheelchair, questions flying. Naomi was rushed into a delivery room, changed into a gown, hooked up to monitors. The steady blip of 2 tiny heartbeats filled the room like a fragile chorus. Dr. Harris arrived not long after, calm as ever, but moving with quiet urgency. "You're in early labor," she confirmed after examining Naomi. "You're about 4 centimeters dilated." Naomi's breath hitched. "Already? We're going to try to slow things down with medication," Dr. Harris said. "Give the babies a little more time to cook, but if we can't stop the contractions, we may have to deliver tonight." Tears welled in Naomi's eyes. "They're not ready." 34 weeks is early, Dr. Harris said gently, but not dangerously so. "Our NICU team is excellent, and we've been monitoring these babies closely. They're strong. So are you." The hours that followed were long and heavy. Zion never left her side. He held her hand, wiped her forehead with cool cloths, whispered encouragement in her ear. He asked the nurses questions, then asked them again, just to be sure. He looked like a man hanging off the edge of a cliff with nothing but hope keeping him there. The medication helped slow the contractions, but it couldn't stop them completely. They eased for a while, then returned, steady and determined. By 10 p.m., Dr. Harris checked Naomi again, then straightened with a look that said everything before she even spoke. "We're not going to be able to stop this," she said softly. "Your babies have decided tonight's their night. They want to meet you." Naomi looked over at Zion, fear and excitement warring in her eyes. "We're about to become parents." "We're about to become parents," he echoed, voice thick. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, lingering there. "I love you so much, Naomi. You're the strongest woman I've ever known. Stay with me, okay?" She squeezed his hand, holding on like it was the only anchor she had. "Wild horses couldn't drag me away," she whispered, even as another contraction built like a wave on the horizon. Outside the room, the hospital moved with clinical efficiency. Inside, under harsh white lights and the steady beep of monitors, 2 people who'd once met over a debt stood on the edge of the biggest credit their hearts would ever take, parenthood, and ready or not. The night was about to change everything. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight when the nurses wheeled Naomi into the delivery room. The bright lights overhead made everything look too sharp, too white, too unreal. Zion followed, one hand clutching hers, the other trying to remember how to breathe. He'd never felt so helpless in his life. Deals he could negotiate. Buildings he could buy. But this was the one thing he couldn't control, couldn't fix. Couldn't plan his way out of. Naomi's voice was hoarse but steady. "Zion," she whispered, between contractions, "look at me." He looked down, her eyes, even slick with tears and pain, still burned with fire. "We're okay," she said. "I need you calm. If you panic, I panic. Deal?" He nodded hard, squeezing her hand. "Deal." Dr. Harris entered, mask in place, .com, and commanding. "All right, Mama, it's go time. You're 8 centimeters. We'll have these babies soon." Naomi gritted her teeth through another contraction, sweat beading along her temple. Zion wiped it away with shaking hands, whispering every prayer he knew. "Push with me when I tell you," Dr. Harris said. "You're doing beautifully." Minutes blurred into hours, the air thick with effort, adrenaline, and faith. Naomi screamed once, then twice, her voice echoing off tile and glass. Zion whispered her name, over and over, grounding her through every wave of pain, and then a cry. Thin, sharp, powerful, Dr. Harris smiled behind her mask. "That's baby A." Naomi sobbed in relief as the nurse held up a tiny, wriggling form, red-faced, furious, alive. Zion's legs nearly gave out. That's our baby. Your daughter," Dr. Harris confirmed, voice warm. "Strong lungs, Daddy." Zion's heart exploded. A daughter, his daughter, but there wasn't time to dwell. Another contraction hit. Sharper, deeper. "Okay, Mama," Dr. Harris said, voice firm. "One more to go. Let's meet baby B." Naomi's strength was fading, her breath ragged, but Zion leaned close, forehead against hers. "You got this, baby. You're almost there." "One more." She pushed. Another cry. This one, smaller, softer, but steady. "Baby B's here," Dr. Harris said gently. Another girl. Naomi collapsed back, sobbing with exhaustion and joy. Zion's tears fell freely now. 2 daughters. 2 heartbeats. 2 tiny miracles. But the joy was tinged with fear. The second baby, smaller than her sister, was whisked away to a nearby table. Nurses moved quickly, voices low but professional. "Respiratory support," one murmured. Slightly underweight, Zion froze. "What's happening?" Dr. Harris placed a hand on his arm. "She's okay, Mr. Holt. She just needs a little help breathing. It's normal with twins this early. She's strong, I promise." Naomi reached for him weakly. "Go to her," she whispered. He hesitated, torn in half. "But I'm fine," she said, though her voice trembled. "Go be with her." Zion crossed the room to where their smaller daughter lay in the incubator. Tiny chest rising and falling under a clear plastic dome. A nurse adjusted the oxygen line, murmuring reassurance. Zion pressed his hand to the side of the incubator, eyes flooding. "Hey baby girl," he whispered. "It's Daddy. You fight, you hear me? Just like your mama." Her tiny fingers twitched, curling as if to answer. Hours later, Naomi was resting in recovery. Zion sat beside her, holding her hand, staring through the nursery window at 2 bassinets, one under a heat lamp, the other hooked to soft beeping monitors. Dr. Harris came in quietly, pulling off her gloves. "Both girls are stable," she said, smiling. "Baby A is in perfect shape. Baby B, she stay in the NICU for observation. Just precaution, she's breathing on her own now." Naomi's tears fell again, this time out of pure gratitude. "Can we see them?" "Of course," Dr. Harris said. "Come meet your daughters." The NICU hummed with machines and quiet miracles. Tiny lives surrounded them, each in their own glowing pod, each fighting their own small battle. Zion helped Naomi into the chair beside their babies. The first lay, wrapped in a pink blanket, tiny fingers stretching as if she already wanted to grab the world. The second, smaller, quieter, rested under the soft light. Her breathing shallow but steady. Naomi touched the edge of the incubator with trembling fingers. "Hey, My little fighters, she whispered. You showed up early, huh? Couldn't wait to meet us. Zion stood behind her, arms circling her shoulders. They're perfect, he murmured. What should we name them? Naomi asked softly. Zion's eyes glistened. You choose, Mama. She smiled faintly. The first one? Amara Faith, because she came into this world loud and fearless. Zion nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. And the second? Naomi looked at the tiny baby under the lamp. Olea Grace, because she's small, but she's strong. Grace got her here. Zion repeated the names softly, reverently. Amara and Olea Holt. He bent and kissed Naomi's forehead. You did it, Naomi. You brought our whole world into this room. The next 2 weeks became a rhythm of hope. Naomi recovered slowly, her body healing while her heart stayed split between the 2 cribs. Every morning, she'd visit the NICU to sit beside Olia's incubator, humming soft gospel tunes her mother used to sing. Zion joined her every evening. Suit jacket traded for hospital wristbands, reading bedtime stories to both girls. He'd press his finger into Olia's tiny palm until she curled around it, every touch grounding him in something far bigger than ambition or wealth. Finally, on a sunny March morning, Dr. Harris came in smiling. She's ready, she said. Baby B is strong enough to go home. Naomi burst into tears. Zion laughed and cried all at once, scooping both babies, Amara sleeping soundly, Olea blinking at the light into his arms. He looked at Naomi, his voice thick. We made it. She smiled through tears. We did. All 4 of us. That night, back home, Naomi and Zion laid their daughters into their cribs side by side for the first time. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the baby monitor and the slow rhythm of 2 tiny breaths. Zion stood in the doorway, arm around Naomi, OE in every line of his face. From a deal, he whispered. To a family, Naomi rested her head on his shoulder. From debt, she said softly, to destiny. They watched their daughters sleep, their fingers brushing together, hearts full. And for the first time in forever, both of them believed completely in miracles. The first week home felt like stepping into a new world, one that ran on 3-hour intervals, coffee, and miracles. Naomi Bennett Holt barely remembered what silence sounded like. Between diaper changes, bottle feedings, and midnight cries, time had stopped belonging to her. The house was a symphony of small sounds now. The rustle of blankets, the squeak of rocking chair hinges, the soft cooing of 2 tiny voices that owned her heart completely. And through all of it, Zion Holt was there, a man transformed. The ruthless CEO, the man whose name used to strike fear across conference tables, now paced their living room at 2 a.m. wearing a faded college hoodie, a burp cloth over his shoulder, and a newborn in each arm. All right? Princesses, he whispered, rocking side to side. You're got daddy on the ropes. Mercy, have mercy. Naomi, watching from the couch, laughed so softly it hurt. Her body was still healing, exhaustion clinging to her like a second skin, but seeing him like this, barefoot, gentle, wrapped around their daughters like he'd been born for it, filled her chest with something she couldn't name. Zion, she murmured. He looked up, bleary-eyed, but smiling. Yeah, baby. You've officially been promoted, she said, voice low. From boss to daddy of the year, he chuckled, kissing Amara's tiny forehead. Don't tell my board, they'll demand performance reports. Your board. She teased. Baby, these 2 are your new board. He looked down at the girls, one drifting off, the other staring up at him with serious, curious eyes. You're right, he said quietly. And they're already tougher negotiators than anyone I've ever met. Days blended into nights that felt like dawn and dusk, traded places. Naomi learned to function on 2-hour naps, dry shampoo, and pure maternal instinct. Zion handled the logistics, sterilizing bottles, balancing finances, scheduling pediatric appointments, and somehow still running a multi-million-dollar company in between naps and diaper runs. But the house, once pristine, now looked lived in. Baby blankets draped over furniture, bottles cooling on the counter, the faint scent of baby lotion and lavender everywhere, and love real. Every day, unglamorous love filled every inch one night. After finally getting both babies down, Zion found Naomi standing in the nursery doorway, arms crossed. Just staring at them. They look so peaceful when they're asleep, she whispered. It's hard to believe those same angels tried to tag-team Scream for 6 straight hours. Zion came up behind her, sliding his arms around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. You handled it like a champ. I cried in the pantry, she admitted, laughing weakly. I know, he murmured, pressing a kiss to her cheek. I heard. I cried in the garage. They both laughed quietly, the sound soft but full of relief. Then Naomi turned in his arms, eyes tired but glowing. I missed us, she said. Zion frowned slightly. Yeah, she said. Before the bottles and burp cloths and chaos. I missed the quiet, the slow nights. He cupped her face gently. We're still here, Naomi. Just in a different chapter. But it's hard to find each other in this one, she said honestly. I don't want to lose us in becoming parents. Zion looked at her for a long moment. Then, without another word, he took her hand and led her downstairs. The kitchen lights were low. The night was quiet except for the hum of the baby monitor. Zion poured 2 glasses of sparkling cider, pushed one toward her, and said, to finding each other again. Naomi smiled faintly, clinking her glass against his. To us. They sat together on the couch, feet tangled under a blanket. Music low, old-school R&B humming through the speakers. The city glowed beyond the window, but inside, everything was slow and soft. Remember when you told me you don't believe in fate? Naomi asked. Zion smirked. Yeah, you said it didn't matter what I believed. Fate believed in me. She nodded, eyes glimmering. It still does. He brushed a thumb under her chin. You know, I thought I'd lose my edge when I settled down. Thought love would make me weak, and he smiled, the kind that came from somewhere deep. Turns out, love made me unstoppable. 2 months later, the twins had started sleeping longer stretches, a victory worthy of champagne. Zion's mother, Lydia Holt, flew in from Charlotte to help, bringing an army of home-cooked meals and motherly advice Naomi didn't know she needed. Lydia was warmth personified, tall, elegant, with that unshakable southern grace that could turn any space into home. When she first held the twins, she cried. 2 grandbabies, she whispered. Twins. Lord, you really doubled down on blessings, didn't you? Zion, seeing his mother cradle Olea, got quiet. Naomi caught it, the soft ache of seeing the woman who'd raised him alone finally rest easy. That night, after Lydia went to bed, Naomi found Zion in the nursery again, watching the twins sleep. She loves them so much, Naomi whispered, sliding beside him. She deserves this, Zion said softly. She worked 3 jobs when I was their age. I used to hear her praying we'd break the cycle. I think we finally did. Naomi leaned her head against his shoulder. You did? You gave her peace. Zion turned his head, kissing her hair. No, you did. Weeks passed. The house grew louder, fuller. The twins learned to smile, and Zion swore. Each grin was different. Olia's soft and shy. Amara's bold and mischievous. One afternoon, Naomi found him lying on the floor between their playmats, laptop abandoned nearby. Both babies babbling on his chest. Zion Holt, she said, laughing. Is this what empire building looks like now? He grinned up at her, looking completely undone. This is the empire. Naomi sank down beside him, her laughter melting into something quiet and tender. You really changed, she said. He looked at her, eyes steady. No, you just gave me a reason to. She leaned over and kissed him, slow, certain, full of every heartbeat that had carried them here. The twins squealed between them, as if protesting being left out, and they both laughed. Looks like we'll never be alone again, Naomi said. Smiling down at her daughters. Good, Zion said, brushing his thumb along her jaw. I don't ever want to be. Later that night, after everyone was asleep, Zion stood by the window again, city lights glimmering outside. Naomi came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Everything okay?" she whispered. He nodded, eyes on the skyline. "Yeah, I was just thinking about where we started. How one desperate night turned into all this." Naomi smiled against his back. "Guess God knew what he was doing." Zion turned, pulling her into his arms. "Guess he did." They stood there, wrapped in each other and the quiet hum of their home, to people who had once been broken by circumstance, now rebuilt by love, laughter, and the tiny breaths of the daughters sleeping upstairs. For the first time in forever, Zion didn't measure success in deals, or money, or control. He measured it in moments, in Amara's sleepy sigh, in Aaliyah's soft coo, in Naomi's heartbeat pressed against his chest, and in that silence, he knew this was everything he'd ever wanted. 6 months after bringing the twins home, life in the Holt household had finally found its rhythm, a tender, chaotic rhythm that was equal parts love and exhaustion. The mornings were the loudest. Amara always woke first, announcing her hunger like a tiny diva with lungs built for Broadway. Aaliyah, the quieter twin, usually followed 10 minutes later with soft whimpers that could melt steel. Naomi moved through the house like muscle. Memory bottle warmers, burp cloths, lullabies, all while humming gospel tunes her mama used to sing. Zion would join in the kitchen soon after, tie loose, coffee in hand, stealing kisses between diaper changes before diving into work calls from his home office. For a while, everything felt perfect, but perfection never lasts. Untouched, it started one Tuesday morning with a knock at the door. Naomi, still in her robe, with Olia balanced on her hip, opened it to find a man she didn't recognize. Mid-40s, sharp suit, smug smile, the kind of man who carried trouble in his briefcase. "Mrs. Holt?" he asked. "Yes." He handed her an envelope. "You've been served." Naomi blinked. "Served?" Before she could ask more, he was already walking down the driveway. Her stomach nodded as she tore the envelope open. Inside, legal papers, heavy with words that made no sense and yet hit like thunder. Plaintiff Sinclair Holdings, LLC. Defendant, Holt Property Group. The claim was massive. A lawsuit alleging breach of contract and damages, tied to a land acquisition Zion had managed 2 years before they ever met. Past had finally come knocking. By the time Zion came downstairs, Naomi was pacing the living room, the papers spread across the coffee table. He took one look at them, and froze. His jaw tightened, eyes flicking from the documents to her face. "Zion," she said softly, "what is this?" He sat down slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Something I thought I buried." "Then unbury it," she said. "Talk to me," he exhaled. Before the girls, I made deals. Fast, aggressive. Sinclair Holdings is run by a man named Donovan Pierce. Old money, dirty money. We partnered on a project once. He cut corners. I walked away. He lost millions and swore he'd make me pay. Naomi's voice stayed calm, but her eyes were sharp. "And now he's trying." "Yeah," Zion said bitterly. "And he knows exactly how to hit me. Not through business, but through my name. Through us." Naomi sat beside him, taking his hand. "Then, we fight." Zion shook his head. "You don't understand how men like Pierce operate. He doesn't just want money. He wants humiliation. He wants my family dragged into this. He'll twist everything." She squeezed his hand harder. "Zion Holt, listen to me. You built this family from nothing but love and grit. You think one man with a grudge can destroy that? You taught me how to fight when I had nothing. Let me remind you, I'm not that scared girl anymore. I'm your wife. I'm their mama. We're not breaking." Zion looked at her, eyes softening with both fear and pride. "You're stronger than I'll ever be." She smiled faintly. "No, baby. I'm strong because you showed me how." The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, lawyers, and media whispers. Headlines started circling. Real estate mogul Zion Holt, facing lawsuit, dark secrets behind the Holt empire. Reporters parked outside their gate. Naomi stopped going to the store, ordering groceries delivered instead. Every time she held the twins, she whispered promises that no storm would touch them. One night, as rain tapped against the windows, Zion sat in his office. The glow from his computer screen painting his face in shadow. Naomi stood in the doorway, watching. "You haven't slept," she said softly. "I can't," he admitted. "Every move I ever made is under a microscope now. The board's nervous. Investors want reassurance. I'm trying to protect what we built." Naomi crossed the room and set a cup of tea on his desk. "Protect us by sleeping. You can't fight tired." He smiled weakly. "You sound like my mother." "She's a wise woman," Naomi said. "Now shut this down for tonight." When he didn't move, she slid into his lap, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Zion, we've been through worse. Remember the night we met? We started in desperation, not comfort. We'll survive this too, because we know how to rebuild." He finally exhaled, resting his forehead against hers. "You're my peace, Naomi, and you're my purpose," she whispered. A week later, they walked into court together. Naomi, in a tailored cream suit, hair pulled into a sleek bun, confidence radiating from her like armor. Zion walked beside her, calm but coiled, ready. Pierce was already seated, his smirk cold and smug. "Mr. Holt," he greeted. "Congratulations on the family." "Shame, it's all built on lies." Naomi's hand tightened around Zion's, but he didn't flinch. When the hearing began, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Lawyers fired accusations. Documents traded hands. Voices rose and fell. Zion sat silent for most of it, until Pierce's attorney implied Naomi had benefited from ill-gotten gains. That's when she stood. "Objection," she said, voice cutting clean through the room. The judge blinked in surprise. She wasn't counsel. But her tone commanded the space. Double quotes Mrs. Holt. The judge said gently. "You're not required to speak." "I'm aware," Naomi said, "but if someone's going to mention my name, I'll make sure it's done right." The entire room went still. Even Pierce looked caught off guard. "My husband built his company on hard work, not theft," Naomi continued, steady and fierce. "And if you think a mother who carried 2 children through high-risk pregnancy and built a home from love is going to let you slander her family, you picked the wrong woman." The silence that followed was electric. Zion stared at her. DOB breaking across his features. Even the judge smiled faintly. "Duly noted, Mrs. Holt. Please continue." By the end of the day, Pierce's case began to unravel. Evidence of his own shady dealings surfaced, and by the second hearing, the lawsuit was dismissed in full. When the ruling came down, Naomi squeezed Zion's hand, tears welling in her eyes. "We did it." "No," Zion said, voice thick. "You did that night, after the twins were asleep." They stood in the backyard under the Georgia moonlight, the air heavy with relief and promise. "You know," Naomi said, leaning into him, "I think your mother's prayers finally caught up to us." Zion smiled, wrapping his arms around her. "Guess we're proof. They work slow, but they work." Naomi looked up at the stars. "We've been through fire and came out gold." He kissed her forehead, whispering, "And we're still shining." They stood there in silence, holding each other, the ghosts of their past finally laid to rest. And inside, through the nursery window, 2 tiny figures slept. The legacy they'd fought for, the reason they'd survived, and the proof that love, once tested, becomes unbreakable. Naomi stood in the soft glow of the nursery nightlight, arms folded loosely over her chest, watching her daughters sleep. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the baby monitor and the slow, steady rhythm of 2 tiny breaths. Amara lay on her back, arms thrown up by her head like she owned the world already. Aaliyah slept on her side, thumb half tucked near her mouth, more peaceful, more still. Their chests rose and fell in perfect sync. Zion stepped up behind Naomi, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just watched. "You ever think about how different it could have been?" Naomi whispered. "If my daddy never took that loan, if you never showed up at our door, if I never made that crazy offer." "Every day," Zion admitted, his voice low. And every day, I'm grateful it all went wrong first, so it could end up right. Naomi smiled softly, eyes still on the twins. We could have lived our whole lives not knowing this was even possible. But we didn't miss it, he said, turning her gently to face him. We found each other anyway, just when we both needed it most. She searched his face, the hard angles softened by the nightlight. I needed somebody to push me, to remind me I was stronger than what life did to me, she said. And I needed somebody to show me that strength isn't about being cold and in control, he replied quietly. It's about letting somebody see you when you're scared, when you're wrong, when you're broken, and staying anyway. Naomi lifted a hand to his jaw, thumb brushing along his beard. You're not broken, Zion. I was, he said, covering her hand with his. I was angry, closed off, all money and no meaning. But you, and these two little miracles. He nodded toward the cribs. You're fixed what I didn't even know was broken. You're my second chance, my proof that even the coldest heart can learn how to love for real. Naomi's eyes shimmered. Say it again, she whispered. He leaned down and kissed her softly, reverently. You, Amara, and Aaliyah. Y'all are my redemption, Naomi, my home. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she was smiling. That's the most beautiful thing you've ever said. It's just the truth, he murmured. Pulling her into his chest, they stood there, wrapped in each other, listening to the gentle sounds of their daughters sleeping. The weight of their journey from that terrifying night to this moment settled around them like a blessing. Aaliyah stirred, letting out a tiny sound. Both of them moved instinctively toward her crib. But she settled herself without fully waking. She's okay, Naomi whispered. They both are, Zion said softly. We all are. And for the first time in a long time, that felt completely, undeniably true. 1 year later, Naomi's childhood house on Maplewood Lane looked almost unrecognizable. Zion had refused to let it go. Instead, he'd bought it outright, gutted and renovated it, and turned it into a weekend home, a place where William could sit on the front porch with his grandbabies and Naomi could still feel her mama's presence in the walls on Amara and Olia's first birthday. The backyard was full to bursting. Pink and white balloons bobbed from every fence post. A banner reading Happy First Birthday, Amara and Aaliyah, stretched across the deck. A small table held 2 tiny smash cakes, one with a crown, one with a cloud of buttercream swirls already under attack by frosting-covered baby hands. Zion sat cross-legged on the grass with Amara in his lap, grinning as she smeared icing all over his beard and shirt, squealing with delight. Across from them, Naomi held Aaliyah, who couldn't care less about her cake, and was completely obsessed with a cluster of helium balloons. She kept grabbing the ribbons, letting them slip through her fingers. Wide-eyed every time the balloons bobbed back up. Friends and family circled around them, phones out, snapping photos, laughing, cheering each new mess. The air smelled like barbecue and birthday cake. Like laughter and home. Rebecca dropped down beside Naomi on the picnic blanket, adjusting her sundress and slipping off her heels. Look at this, Rebecca said, shaking her head in wonder. Who would have thought all this started with a debt? Naomi chuckled, eyes on Zion and Amara. Not a debt, she corrected quietly. An investment. Rebecca lifted a brow. In what? In love, Naomi said, smiling. In family. In taking a chance on something that made absolutely no sense on paper. Rebecca snorted softly. Wow. Motherhood got you poetic. Naomi laughed. Maybe it's motherhood. Maybe it's him. She nodded, toward Zion. Probably both, Rebecca said, nudging her shoulder. Across the yard, Zion looked up and caught Naomi's gaze. His whole face lit up, that unguarded, boyish smile he only ever wore for his girls. He mouthed, I love you. Naomi mouthed it right back, her heart swelling. William walked over then, moving slower than he used to, but smiling wider. He held a sweating glass of lemonade, condensation dripping onto his fingers. Y'all having fun? He asked, easing himself down onto the blanket beside his daughter. More than fun, Naomi said, leaning her shoulder against his. It's perfect. William watched Zion blow raspberries on Amara's frosting-smeared belly, making her shriek with laughter. For a moment, his eyes went shiny. "You know, baby girl," he said hoarsely. "For a long time I felt nothing but guilt about what I did. That loan, the mess. Putting you in that position, Daddy, let me finish," he said gently. "I thought I ruined everything. Thought I failed you, and your mama." He shook his head, staring at his granddaughters. "But look at you now. Look at them. Look at that man over there who worships the ground you walk on. Maybe that terrible mistake was actually the best thing I ever did." Naomi squeezed his hand, her eyes filling. "It was terrifying back then," she admitted. "But, you're right. It pushed everything into motion. It brought me to Zion. To my girls. To this." William exhaled, some old weight finally leaving his shoulders. "Then I can live with it," he said softly, as the sun dipped lower and guests started packing up to leave. The backyard slowly emptied. The twins finally knocked out, sleeping hard in their portable cribs under the shade of the old oak tree. Little faces still streaked with dried frosting. Naomi moved around the yard with a trash bag, scooping up paper plates and gift wrap. Trying to reclaim some order, Zion walked up behind her and gently took the bag from her hands. "Leave it," he said. "We'll handle all this later." "There's so much to clean," she protested. Glancing around at the chaos, "Later," he repeated. Dropping the bag and tugging her down onto the grass beside him, she let herself fall, landing against his side. The ground was still warm from the day's heat. Fireflies started blinking lazily along the fence line. For a moment, they just lay there, staring up at the sky, streaked with orange and purple, birthday balloons drifting softly above them. Zion turned his head toward her. "You know something," he said quietly. "I'm happy." Naomi smiled, teasing. "You sound surprised." He chuckled, rubbing a hand over his face. "I am. Not 'cause I didn't think I could be. I just never knew it would feel like this. Loud and sticky and messy, and simple, somehow. I spent my whole life chasing peace in numbers and deals and buildings. Turns out, it was right here in 2 smash cakes and your daddy's backyard." Naomi rolled onto her side, propping herself up on her elbow so she could really see him. "You have everything you said you wanted back then," she reminded him. "Security, control, power. But now you've got what you never knew you needed." He reached up and tucked a curl behind her ear. "You, them. A family that doesn't love me 'cause of what I built, but 'cause of who I am when I put all that down." She swallowed, emotion clogging her throat. "When we met, I thought you were the worst thing that could have happened to us," she admitted. "Some cold millionaire coming to take our home." "I was that man," he said honestly, "at least on the surface. But underneath, there was this other man," she said softly. "The one who stayed, who learned, who fought for me, not against me. That's the man I fell in love with. The man my daughters call Daddy." Zion's eyes went glassy. "Thank you for seeing him," he murmured. "Even when I couldn't." She leaned down and kissed him, slow, unhurried, tasting of lemonade and birthday cake and years of healing. When she pulled back, the backyard was almost silent. Only the crickets, the distant hum of the city, and the soft breaths of 2 sleeping girls. "Think about it," Naomi said, resting her head on his chest. "All the scary parts. The debt, that first night, the pregnancy, the court stuff, the long nights with no sleep. Wouldn't change a single one," Zion said immediately. "Not even the worst moments." "Especially the worst," he replied. "They led to the best. To you saying yes. To them being here. To us sitting in this yard, like we ain't got a care in the world." Naomi smiled, eyes slipping closed. "From debt," she said quietly, "to destiny. From broken," Zion added, pressing a kiss to her forehead, "to blessed." Behind them, someone called out their names from the patio, probably Rebecca, probably William, probably another round of pictures or traditions they were supposed to finish. But for just one more moment, they stayed where they were, tangled together on the grass, under fading balloons and a sky full of possibility, to people who had met under the worst circumstances, but chose each other anyway. Two little girls sleeping nearby. Proof that love born in chaos can still grow into something steady, something holy, something whole. Whatever came next, they knew one thing for sure. They'd face it together.